welcome members and the public to this evening's meeting of the City Council. I will first of all like to ask my chaplain to open the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council. Just start with a very brief bit of social history. The parish that I help out in, it's not my proper job, I'm very much a part-timer there, was formed in the late 70s. It developed out of a congregation that had been meeting in St. Bede's School, but had grown out of it and thought it was time to build their own church centre. And the people were mostly British, Irish and Italian, with some Polish families too. And that was more or less still the case when I first arrived in the parish, which was 20 odd years ago now. Over the years since, the composition of the parish has changed significantly. And if you look at the congregation on any Sunday now, you will find people from every continent, from many different nations and cultures, and many different ethnic backgrounds. From India, Sri Lanka, Japan, the Philippines, from Zimbabwe, Nigeria and other African countries, from Brazil, Mexico and other places in the Americas, as well as citizens of many different European nations. An informal survey that we did at the parish a few years ago, there were in fact 52 different nationalities as part of the congregation. Now they've come to Cambridge to work, to study, to research in the university, in the health service, in care homes, excuse me, in our thriving technological industries. They do vital work and they bring in gifts and talents for our city and community. And I'm sure that our church isn't unique in being a centre within a city that's very diverse and multicultural. In a way, it's a microcosm of the wonderfully diverse city in which we live, enriched by the contributions of people of a multitude of different cultural, ethnic and national backgrounds. And at a time of national debate about migration, about national and international borders and communities, just seems to put this debate in context. We, all of us, are privileged to live and work in a place enriched by the diversity of its people, the people we come together to serve. As we make our decisions today and always, we remember their human dignity and we stand in solidarity with them, people of many backgrounds who come together to make up this great city of ours.
Please can I remind councillors to use their microphones at all times. If the public are having difficulty hearing the discussion, please raise your hand or alert an officer. We're not expecting a fire alarm test, but the fire exits are located at the back and front of the council chamber. For wheelchair users and those with mobility issues, please make your way to the safe waiting area in Pease Hill Stairway. Council officers will be on hand to assist when required. An accessible unisex toilet is located outside the council chamber, opposite the members' room. A drinks machine is located opposite committee room 1. Cambridge City Council is filming this meeting, and a copy will be available in full through in a couple of days. There is the first, isn't it? Could I ask members to be concise with their contributions and show respect to their fellow members? Can I now approve the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 22nd of October and the 30th of November 2015, which can be found on pages 9 and 43? received from Councillor McPherson. Could I ask if there's any further apologies?
Apologies from Councillor Saunders.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you to members of the council who attend the annual Sheffield Sermon at Our Lady and the English Martyrs at the end of January. With regret, this year's civic reception from the Cambridge Heidelberg Easter Festival has been cancelled due to a conflict with dates between the colleagues in Heidelberg. The next reception will be held in Cambridge will take place in 2018 as this is the biannual event. A report on the local plan will be considered by the Development Plan Scrutiny Subcommittee on the 14th of March and then by Council on the 23rd of March. This addresses the results of consultation on proposed modifications to the local plan that respond to the issues raised by the inspectors. The DPSSC report will be published on the 4th of March and a briefing session for members has been organised for 2 o'clock on that day. An invitation has been circulated to all members this afternoon. I am delighted to inform the Council that Sue Edwards, former civic and twinning officer who served the Council for approximately 39 years, will be awarded an honorary degree from the University of Cambridge on the 23rd. On the 23rd of April in recognition of her time and dedication served this city. I'd like to ask members to declare now any interest in the items on the agenda for us this evening. Members are reminded that they can declare an interest at any time during the meeting if it occurs to them during the debate tonight. I understand the following people wish to address the meeting: Alistair Boyles, Simon Bew, Penny Heath and Mike Sargent. Under the scheme allowing members of the public to speak at council meeting, each speaker must address his or her comments to the chair of the relevant committee or the relevant member of the executive. Each question or statement must be limited to 3 minutes, with a further 2 minutes for a supplementary question or comment on something that has been said. There is normally an overall time limit for public questioning of 30 minutes, including the time taken by the responses to the questions, but this can be extended at my discretion. Would Alistair Boyles please come forward to ask his question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to address this to specifically Councillors Herbert and Blanco, but I'd like everybody else to pay attention as well, please. The 2003 Design and Development Brief for Cambridge stated that the single greatest obstacle to community cohesion and development of the Mitchell's Corner area was the overwhelming effect of traffic and the gyratory traffic system. In the new local plan, Policy 21, the city recognises Mitchell's Corner as an opportunity area and sets out the objective to reduce the effect of traffic on the area and ultimately to remove the gyratory system in favour of a simpler intersection. This policy has overwhelming support from the residents and traders in the Mitchell's Corner catchment area and our city and county councillors. What measures are the City Council and the City Deal Authority taking to ensure that the City Deal proposals for Milton Road will further this objective to reduce the effects of traffic and the gyratory road system that have blighted this part of Cambridge for decades?
gyratory system and the area around which water was discussed and a brief was proposed at that time, with a view to trying to shape development in the future. It's clearly been a slow process. There have been clearly changes around Richards Corner, but on a very slow and piecemeal nature. And more recently, because of our identification of the area again as an opportunity area, there was a very constructive community engagement exercise at the Victoria Park Pavilion, I believe it is, which was quite attended. There was a very constructive and participation, I thought, was very good in the sense that people were actually prepared to listen to what was said and actually were prepared to sort of think about ideas other than the ones they had themselves, which is, I thought that was familiar with consultations. It's not always the case, but that was certainly the case. In terms of where we are, and I'll speak from the city sort of planning perspective, the city and the county councils are working closely together on both the master plan, as I've just referred to, for Mitchell's Corner, in terms of the city council part of it, and clearly there's the City Deal project for Milton Road that's created an awful lot of interest in recent months. As part of that master plan, the City Council does have a policy that seeks to remove or revise the existing gyratory Mitchell's Corner. That's, I think you mentioned, the policy 21 of the emerging local plan. Our policy does require us to re-prepare a master plan, up-to-date master plan to guide future change for Mitchell's Corner area. And that's obviously ongoing and clearly all running parallel with the long process that we all know and love to be the local plan, which will be subject to a full meeting in a couple of weeks. While the City Deal scheme for Milton Road is being progressed at this time, there is obviously the City Deal discussions and proposals. The City Deal scheme is understood not to be dependent on changes being made to Mitchell's Corner in terms of changes to the gyratory system at Mitchell's Corner. Whether you feel that was right or wrong, that is understood to be the case. However, if changes to the gyratory could help deliver better public transport and improve the reliability, particularly of journeys by public transport, and therefore meet some of the objectives of the City Deal, then the City Council would hope those changes could be delivered as part of that process. At this stage, until further work is done, both on the City Deal scheme and our own master plan, it is too early to say whether the City Deal can fund the undoing of the gyratory. If City Deal funding is not used for the undoing of the gyratory, then funding will likely be sought from other sources, including developer contributions, other transport initiatives, all sources of funding, and to a limited degree our own local centres improvements programme. However, clearly the cost of tackling the gyratory system will be huge. The City Deal money, which Lewis may refer to at the moment, we've only been promised the first 100 million. It may sound a lot, but when you've got competing priorities, and there's an awful lot of projects on the second sort of tranche list who've been obviously pushing their case for other corridors into the city, that will not stretch as far as we would like. But if the other 400 million in 200 million sort of tranches of money over the next 15 years, yes, it's the next 15 years, if they come forward, they have been promised, but clearly we can't guarantee that, then clearly the bigger projects can be part and parcel and delivered on the back of that. But I think I'll leave it at that moment. Thank you.
Have you got a supplementary?
No.
Okay, thank you. And then next we have Simon Bell. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong.
Mr. Mayor, I actually have just a comment because I think Councillor Blanco answered really my question, which is also about the City Deal and the inclusion of Mitchell's Corner as part of that. I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about the plan B for Mitchell's terms of the funding specifically. You did mention some sources. I wonder if you could just expand on that a little, please. We understand that the fixing of the gyratory would probably cost about over about 5 million. And it does seem that the city deal is offering an ideal opportunity that we should try and press for as much as we can, in that we have some funding, we have expertise there, and we also have a great public interest, as you mentioned. So if the gyratory could fall under the remit of the city deal, I think it would be an excellent fit for everyone, and obviously a great benefit to Mitchell's Corner. So if you could perhaps just expand a little bit more on the alternative funding if the city deal isn't able to bankroll the fixing of the gyratory.
Thank you. Councillor Blackwell?
Yeah, I'll try to repeat what I said earlier. In terms of the City Council's master plan exercise for Mitchell's Corner, which obviously residents have been involved in until now and will be continually involved in as it progresses. Clearly, we want that to set the development plan development brief for the area. So whoever then takes part within that, whether they be landowners, property owners, or people with interests within the Mitchell's Corner area, then they, we hope then by setting the brief and adopting it, will follow the wishes of that brief, which will be worked up by residents ourselves and other sort of stakeholders involved in that process, and that will then set sort of parameters, as it were, into how the area as a whole is developed. Some money will accrue from parts of that development within the area, because there are still planning obligation requirements. It may change with the new community infrastructure levy, which is to be discussed as part of the local plan process, but that's a different way of collecting money from developers in short. But there will be monies accruing from parties within the area who then put forward proposals perhaps on their own land or in the area to develop parts of it. That will be limited, of course, because some of that will only be based on the formulas we're allowed to apply. In terms of the bigger gyratory issue, that's where we will have to source extra funding, because the cost of that, to be fair, wouldn't be borne by even perhaps half a dozen different developments within the Mitchell's Corner area, because it's such a huge undertaking. That's where we're going to need assistance either from the city deal or from other sources of funding, particularly national funding, if we can bring it down to supplement our own. But that's where we on your behalf will be looking for that package of funding, and it may well be that, and I fully expect it to be covered in the Mitchell's Corner master plan that the city is progressing, a view on how the design or the future design of that gyratory system can work within the overall context of the Mitchell's Corner area. And that will be an interesting process, and we will see what comes out of it. And obviously that's where the community have been involved with local knowledge and how that can best be put forward. But we have in the past put down views on how areas of the city can be developed to sort of set a parameter, as it were, as a benchmark of how that progresses, and sometimes the integral sort of traffic infrastructure is part and parcel of that.
Because the city deals with it, I was twice, perhaps Councillor Herbert, just like to add to that.
Well, first of all, as part of the city deal consultation, we will actually have a look at the responses that come back in about the whole leg of the lower part of the road, but also on Mitchell's Corner. I attended the meeting of
understanding is that the developers of Wonderland Road were extremely keen that their Section 106 money should be, if possible, targeted to help develop the Richards Corner area specifically, rather than being siphoned off into a general infrastructure fund. And I was wondering just if it's possible that that money could go towards the cost, for example, of the limited cost of developing a master plan. Can you make any comment on how that, the decision on where that money goes is taken? Is it possible to say that it will be directed to Richards Corner if possible?
Thank you. Who wants to answer that one?
Over recent years, developments are obliged to pay various pots of money to various categories we identified as being appropriate to be received on the back of the sort of particularly mitigation or to negate impacts of those developments. One of those is clearly on the transport, and there is a transport element of that. That's very much allocated on a corridor basis, or has been over recent years. There's a bit more of a city-wide sort of view of it, but it has been a corridor-based funding, so it's expected that money, if there's transport money within it, is spent within the existing corridor where the development occurs, i.e. Milton Road, and the lead up to Milton Road, so I think there's an understanding on that. In terms of some of the other categories, there will be categories for public rail improvement, community facility, if my understanding is applicable. I'm not sure it was on Milton Road, but it may well have been, but there are various categories of money that's been approved from that development, and the premise has always been to spend that money in the local area where there is a scheme identified within that local area, but because a lot of it's time limited, obviously some of the money is then spent to make sure it's not wasted in terms of the use of the city as a whole, but the premise is that it's used locally, particularly the points I've raised. I mean, I think it was student housing was part of that development, was it, rather than residential housing, so probably educational provision wasn't approved, but on some developments educational monies are approved per housing unit, and that the intention of that is to be spent by the county within the immediate area on local schools, but whether that strictly is the case, we're not sure.
Thank you. Next we have Penny Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question which is on tourism and the impact on Cambridge, in particular residents. People understand the economic benefits of tourism, but there's a call for addressing sometimes the adverse effects of mass tourism, and is the city getting the balance right? And I noticed there's a line in the corporate plan, which is very good to have a corporate plan, but there's this statement, I'll just read it out. Working with the organisations of Cambridge Live, Cambridge Bid and Visit Cambridge and Beyond to develop and deliver a programme of outdoor public events and activities and to maximise economic benefits from visits and tourism. I want to address this to Councillor Riley, and I think I've got, sorry, yes, I should have said it for you. So my question is, should this sentence make it clearer that any programme of events should benefit the residents as well as tourism? And does there need to be another line to indicate how the City Council will protect the city from the exploitation of tourism? I think the word maximise is a bit strong, and it needs a bit of counterbalance. And I made a suggestion of wording that perhaps you don't primarily benefit residents and create no adverse effects to the city's valuable green and natural historic assets, and rather than maximise the economic benefits, to call it to gain. The other aspect is that I know there's a new the governance structure of all those
Thank you very much for your question, and I do appreciate the basis for the concern. It's one shared by many of us. If I may restate it, I think it's better based on trying to ensure the costs of tourism are integrated into our thinking as a council, as much as recognising the benefits of it, and that economic costs and benefits are the only ones that we should be taking into account as a council, and the way that we think about tourism in Cambridge. As you know, the corporate plan, the statement of the corporate plan that you're referring to directly refers to 3 organisations: Cambridge Live, Cambridge Bid, Visit Cambridge and Beyond. And given that we've got quite a few members of the public, I'll just clarify briefly the nature and I suppose the genealogy of those organisations, because as you say, it can be a bit opaque, and as councillors, we sometimes assume that people come to meetings having read all of the minutes of every previous meeting. The BID is the Business Improvement District. It's funded by a levy on businesses in the city, and it provides services and activities directed to the needs of those businesses who pay for it. Recognising the city has a strong social mix, we're a member of the BID, and I currently sit on the board of the BID, which gives us a say in the direction and decisions that the BID takes. Cambridge Live is also an arm's length trust set up to manage a portfolio of events formerly run within the council. The impetus behind setting that up was partly driven by the needs to make savings because of central government cuts, but also because the trust has more freedom in terms of those events. It's a way of safeguarding the future of events that mean a lot to local residents, but also because the trust can attract donations, it has certain exemptions in taxation and things like that. So it's a lot more flexible. The City Council has 2 trustees on the board of Cambridge Live as well. Visit Cambridge Beyond is the newest of 3 organisations. It was only launched last month. So if you think there's something we need to do with the website that to make it better, I can certainly take that back to the board and see what we can do with that. The City Council, again, entitled to a seat on the board, and currently, again, I'm a member of the board of the DMO. It was launched, as I say, in January, so it really is very brand new. It's probably the most pertinent to the organisations to the question you're addressing, which is how we as a council deal with tourism. Visit Cambridge and Beyond was set up in part to try and address some of the questions that you're raising, really, which was to focus on a model of high-value tourism so that the costs and the burdens are spread further across the region, but also we're looking to encourage people to stay longer rather than having long experiences on day trippers. And it's also to ensure that the costs and the burdens and benefits to an extent are borne by those who have a stake in tourism and a stake in the economic benefits. So it's funded by membership fees of tourism organisations. They pay for it. And because they pay for it, they can then direct it to a large extent, although again we have a seat on that board, and so does the county council at the moment, I believe. And the proceeds from official guided tours, so the ones that run from downstairs. From the perspective of the City Council, it was a specific recognition that there are burdens to tourism as well as benefits to be gained, led us to try to set that up and try to change the model of tourism in the city. And that the economic benefits and the costs should be shared. So it shouldn't be purely the City Council that's funding the way that we market tourism, for example. That should be something that was borne by the people, by the companies and the businesses that benefit from it. And I think the question you're asking really about whether we can amend the corporate plan is more a technical one. I think you're asking to reflect that sense of benefits and burdens being more than economic. And I do very definitely appreciate the point. The wording and phrasing of the plan has been chosen because to some extent benefits are measurable, economic benefits are measurable, in a way that, say, benefits to residents are difficult to measure. And the corporate plan is laid out in order to set us targets that we can see if we've met or not. So in that sense, it would be quite difficult to think perhaps to operationalise some of the benefits and the burdens that you're talking about in a way that we can measure it in the corporate plan itself. From a technical perspective, I think the corporate plan from 2016 to 19 has already been agreed by the leader as an executive decision. So we would find it very difficult to open that up now before determining the next one for 2019 and onwards. But I do appreciate the sense of the question and the proposed amendment. Sustainable tourism and the way it affects residents is at the heart of everything we're currently trying to do with DMO. And I'd be very happy to meet you outside this meeting and talk a little bit more about how we're trying to address these and perhaps talk about what the DMO is attempting to do.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you very much for that. And I think, as I said, there wasn't an executive council for tourism before, and it's the nearest thing. And I think this aspect of measuring, I think something strongly done measuring the adverse impacts. Like so Garrett has today, we actually can't walk down the street in the summer, we cycle, and we have the coaches on the backs, and so somehow just need to formalise, perhaps from the resident perspective. I don't know how you include it into the management organisation, but it'd be nice to have some resident representation
issue that's come up recently on rubbish in Cambridge. This is for Councillor Roberts. I'm speaking as a West Chester resident. Given that there has been claims in a leaflet by the West Chester Liberal Democrats, I'm not aware as a resident that there has been any rubbish piling up in the streets or litter swamping children's areas in West Chesterton. Can you say whether these claims are true or false? And this is the article.
My eyes. Would you like to say true or false?
Right, here we go. Yes, right, just before I begin, I think what's happened here is I've seen the article questions scanned and sent to me by Mr. Simon. There's been the conflation of two fundamentally different issues. One is with the shared waste service and our bin crews moving to Waterbeach, obviously during that period, before when they recently had a vote to bring their start time forward to improve round efficiency and so on. There was a slight increase in the amount of bins, residential bins, that were missed in the round. And the second issue is obviously one to do with litter bins. And I think what's happened in the case of this leaflet is that some bright individual has heard the words bins have been missed and assumed it was litter bins. Hence the streets are now swamped. What I would say in relation to the first part of that, in terms of residential bins, you're a bit of a sticky wicket for the opposition on this one. The highest in terms of missed bins in the last 2 years or 18 months that Labour have been controlling this council has got to is just been over 100 within the course of 100,000. I thank the office for getting this to me just in time. The highest it got to on political Democrats in April 2014 was they estimated, because they couldn't quite add them up in time, between 1,000 and 4,000. So first of all, I think we're, in terms of collection rate, it's at a 99.99% rate generally, and the average week about 40 bins missed. In comparison to previous years, that's more or less in line, with a slight increase around November, which we're expecting to see decrease with the recruitment of more staff which are now come in, with the moving forward of starting times. Now, in relation to the litter bin question, obviously I'm surprised to say this is a false claim, but I'll give you a few empirical facts as to why I think this is a false claim. Firstly, again, thank you to the officer who had to go through 3 years of the complaint register, but in the last year there have been 4 complaints about litter in the city. The year before there were 8, suggesting a 50% reduction in an already low base. What we've tried to do in terms of, and if you take some of those complaints, to give you an idea of the sort of things, we had as many complaints complaining about the noise of our staff collecting litter as we did about litter, because our staff in the city centre were using petrol blowers, a bit like leaf blowers to blow litter out from under street furniture, which we've now moved to being electric, because obviously several people in colleges are trying to get a good night's sleep, and also in flats around the city centre. Now, on top of all of this, we now actively encourage, obviously, by councillors and residents associations, and obviously the public as well, both online through environment reports, that people report cases of litter. And in terms of these service requests, the general gist of ad hoc service requests, we tend to resolve them within 1 to 2 days, depending on when it's come in. Obviously, if it comes in on a Friday evening, it might not get resolved depending on the sort of issue it is until the Monday following. But in terms of ad hoc, small level reporting of issues to defend this, we generally have a very good mop-up rate. Now, when this came into me, obviously I emailed my officers and my team and said, is there any truth to this? Because there is an image associated with it, so on, one that none of us recognise as a team. And they responded as follows. We have not received any complaints in West Chesterton area, or any ward for that matter, complaining of litter in children's play areas. We have no evidence to indicate any issue with rubbish piling up anywhere in the city, including West Chesterton. We have no evidence to suggest we are failing in this ward or in other wards, and we believe that proactively we have done a very good job in street services. Crucially, children's play areas, and this is where the whole thing slightly falls down, is that every day, on average, once a day, play areas in the city are checked. And the reason they're checked is because we have to, for insurance reasons, make sure that the equipment is working and no one's going to be injured.
At the same time they check their day, the same person would also report evidence of fly tipping or litter. So for it to be building up would suggest that that person hasn't been doing that. However, again, not borne out by empirical fact, because a log is kept of those visits. So what I would say is the ward in question has not only had recently a deep clean through a blitz that we introduced. The councillors who cover the ward have been incredibly proactive, the city councillors and Labour County Council, reporting a whole range of issues, and all credit to them, because that's what they should be doing, to do with extra patrols and different things and extra bins and so on. But what I would say is that the councillors for said ward and any other ward that maybe that need to not gone out, I'm only aware of one, but I've heard recently that there may be others, haven't, well, apart from being the same picture in every ward, haven't reported this issue. So what I would suggest is that they're either seeing piles of rubbish and not reporting them, or they don't exist. Now, on top of all of this, you can see why this sort of thing is kind of being put around. Firstly, it's the misunderstanding of a couple of issues, but more importantly, it's because of the lacklustre history of the opposition when they ran the council, and unsurprisingly, some of the major steps forward that, as a group, we have done. Now, these steps forwards include, amongst other things, a fixed penalty rate for dog fouling, which would have taken under their previous rate 60 years to achieve within our 1 year. 6 times the increase in fixed penalty notice for littering, up to 180. The employment of an additional dog warden, and dog fouling posters, and a dog fouling campaign. The creation of environmental laws, releasing open data on how capacity to improve the environment, decentralising from whoever's in my position down to ward councillors and resident associations, the control of the local priorities as they see them. We save the pest control team to help with public land and obviously on private land. Install more litter and dog bins on new sites than for several years before. Mapped, crucially, the famous mapped where the bins were for the first time, so they could actually be emptied more efficiently. Doubled the enforcement team. Introduced additional litter pickets for open spaces in peak summer. Introduced steel bins where barbecues are to stop dumping. Introduced ward walkabouts. Distributed thousands of portable ashtrays. Introduced new equipment and volunteer equipment from FPN money that has been raised by the council. Filled the vacant public ground post left empty under the opposition. Introduced, I'm nearly there, I know it's one of this, but we've done a lot. Introduced extra documents.
Can we be in order, please? Yeah. You might be able to redo your newsletter here with the facts each time.
And on top of that, we've also recently, as council hopefully realised, introduced a new position to do with not only volunteering, encouraging volunteering, but also community engagement. So all in all, I think we've done an all right job.
Can I now go to item 6? I wish to advise the council that licence item 6A should not have appeared on the agenda. The licence committee is empowered to set its fees, which did not so at January meeting. We now turn to agenda item 6B, the recommendation of the licence committee, the incorporation of the Criminal Justice and Police Act 2001 into the council constitution. The recommendation is set out on pages 347 and 348 of the agenda. Okay then, Councillor Benstead, you've got a right to reply. Whatever was said. We will now go to the vote. Please can I see those in favour of recommendation?
That's unanimous.
That's unanimous, thank you very much. We now turn to agenda item 6C, the recommendation of the Civic Affairs Committee pay policy statement. The recommendation is set out in the information pack on page 41 and was a copy also sent out to you. Is there any debate? No, thank you. No debate, vote then, vote. Unanimous again, thank you. I was going to go. We now turn to agenda item 6D, the recommendation of the Civic Affairs Committee, constitutional changes for the council meetings, procedure rules, amendment and constitution. The recommendation is set out in the information pack on page 43 and a copy is also sent out to you in the post. Is there any debate? All right. Councillor Leslie.
Always one, isn't it? Always one.
Very popular. Say something briefly about this point. The proposals are very good, but we do spend an awful lot of time at these debates dealing with oral questions which people already know the answer to. Is it possible to have this discussed at committee as well, that we remove the element of blowing our own trumpet, and note tonight that it's possible to do that in public questions as well as oral questions?
I've been informed, I think it's right, if you want this to go, you can go to Civic Affairs Agenda and discuss it.
Okay, I'll do that.
Well, we've got something here who will answer better than me. Who wants to go? Lewis, go. Councillor Lewis.
Just a very brief point. I'd just like to pay tribute to Councillor Hipkin because he's not here. The whole purpose of this motion was to shorten debates, but unfortunately it hasn't worked this evening.
Councillor Blake,
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Speaking as Deputy Chair of the Civic Affairs Committee, taking on board Councillor Gillespie, the Green Councillors, point, yes, he can bring that to Civic Affairs, I'm sure. If he brought it to Civic Affairs, that we wanted less discussion at council level with the staff, the public to ask questions to us. I'm sure it'll be very popular. But please, by all means, bring it forward.
thank you then. So I will now go to the vote. Please can I see those in favour of the recommendation?
Unanimous again.
Unanimous, great. We now turn to agenda item 6E, the recommendation of the Civic Affairs Committee, Localism Act 2011 and the standards of conduct, appointments of the independent person and deputy. The recommendation is sent out in the information pack on page 45 with paper copies sent to you out in the post. There's no debate. I will now go to the vote. Please can I see all those in favour of the recommendation? Unanimous again. Right, item 7. This item will last for 30 minutes. At the conclusion of the 30 minutes, the Executive Council or leader, as appropriate, may provide written response to any questions that have not been covered. Will the councillors please put their questions in the order shown on the separate sheet printed on the white paper? Councillor Pitt has the first question. The Executive Council Chair and nominee will have up to 2 minutes to reply. The questioner will have 2 minutes to put a supplementary question or seek clarification of the response to the original question. The Executive Council Chair and nominee will have a further 2 minutes to reply to the supplementary question. I wish to take 6 and 7 together as they are similar contexts. There will be up to 4 minutes for response. Councillor Tom Jones may then ask a supplementary question followed by a response. Then Councillor Vick can ask a supplementary question. A background note to questions 6 and 7 have been circulated, printed on the blue paper, your information.
Before we start, just brief response to
Oh, yeah, it's gone 10:30, so we have to have a vote. I'm going to carry on and come back Monday. Shall I see hands up? Let's carry on then, right. So, Councillor Pitt.
Number 1, please. At the time of inspection, verbal guidance regarding the points of concern was offered to the company catering supervisor and all the food management team, with a formal report subsequently being sent to the management team. A summary of this report has previously been provided to Councillor Pitt, I believe, by Frank, so I know you're all quite interested in this. The report also states the corrective measures required to be followed by the business to enable them to fully comply with their legal obligations, as is the procedure followed with all inspections of local food businesses and bigger businesses, stroke, obviously in this case a hospital. Accompanying this report was guidance enabling Adam Brooks to both inform us when the identified concerns had been addressed and offering them the option to request a re-rating inspection visit. In addition to this assistance, Adam Brooks, as with every food business, once it has been inspected, was able to contact the inspecting food officer at the time following the inspection to clarify what measures they would have to take to fill up their
think it's important. I just want to thank the officers for their help looking at this and thank you for the answer. I think it's important not to scare them because this is all management processes not being followed. The officers were very clear to me that if they followed what they said or wrote down what they were doing, they'll probably be okay, with the exception of a small item. So I'm very pleased to hear that, and thank you very much. Yeah.
If I could just offer one other smaller point of information. Obviously, this is something that I know that, as I say, Councillor Vick is genuinely interested in. It's something which it's important isn't misreported. Adverts haven't failed a food inspection. What we're talking about in terms of the FHRS rating of 1 refers to only the small kitchen units rather than the main food kitchen, which is used for patients and everyone else, which is rated at a 5-star level. And the kitchens that we're talking about, the small kitchens which are used for preparation, not used for preparation of meals, but actually used for making things like tea, coffee, toast, storage of milk. So we're not talking about any significant risk to anyone outside of the staff. And the risk to them is not even a great risk, but it will be rectified, obviously. Hopefully we'll be fine for re-rating in 3 to 6 months.
Question 2.
Question 2.
Mr Mayor, this council, together with our partners from Rainbow Savers and Eastern Savings and Loans, have set up 6 new access points across the city, which have been operational since last November. The 6 new locations are East Barnwell Community Centre, the Meadows Community Centre, Brownsfield Community Centre, Trumpington Pavilion, Ross Street Community Centre, and the council's City Homes South offices on Chillingham Road. We have made a concerted effort to bring in new volunteers to help staff access to help staff the access points. This involved the King's News Story and the credit unions themselves contacting their members, asking if they would be interested. They also attended a volunteer for Cambridge last month. As a consequence of this activity, a number of people have now come forward expressing an interest in being involved with the project. The council and credit unions undertook a wide-ranging publicity and marketing blitz, which started in October. Flyers were sent to all 8,500 Cambridge benefit recipients, community centres and equality and diversity groups. Adverts appeared on the sides of stagecoach buses and large posters were displayed in key areas across the city. We had articles in Cambridge Matters and Open Door Tenant magazine. Emails were sent to 200 private landlords and letting agents, highlighting the importance of tenant management as a result of universal credit. We also had a specific Twitter account set up. We will continue to publicise our credit union initiatives, so a targeted leaflet drop that has recently taken place in areas where the access points have not been so busy. Articles will be sent to editors of community newspapers. A presence at the local community days will be there, and at the big weekend of July. In terms of impact, both Rainbow Savers and Eastern Savings have seen at least a 10% increase in membership since last October. In addition, there have been 73 accounts set up since September in the name of pupils from King's Savers Primary and North Cambridge Academy Schools as part of the council's Junior Savers pilot. The original aim was for 125 new adult accounts to be set up by November 2016, which, although it seems smaller, is fairly substantial in comparison to current membership totals.
Are we getting there?
I'm getting there. Mr Mayor. In total, so far we have 52 new accounts in just 4 months, so we're on target to exceed, we're on target to meet and exceed our aim.
Have a supplementary?
I'm very glad to hear that we are actually achieving something on this. The universal credit system came in with single people this week, or last week, and it's essential that we help poor people who have access to financial facilities in no way. So I'm very grateful for the progress that has been made.
Thank you.
I hope that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Coventry.
Question 3.
Thank you. I'm not in charge of bus services, but I do expect that the city deal proposals for Milton Road will facilitate a better service, including for local residents. The purpose of looking at the detailed layout of the streetscape is also to see bus services can be improved. I'm conscious that at the moment both part of the proposal, once the detailed consultation has been considered by the City Deal Board, and along with a number of questions this evening, it's strange, Mr Mayor, that these are asked here and not the City Deal. The discussion with Stagecoach will take place. We would hope that Stagecoach or another operator would look at specific location on that road, perhaps at the Mitchell's Corner end for a guided bus stop, which would obviously need to have some changes to the pavements. We would hope also that the park and ride buses may stop. I'm aware that there is a number 9 bus service that currently doesn't operate in the evenings or at weekends. We would expect that with the increase in population proposed in locations like Water Beach, with the new station being built, that there would be improvements in bus services.
Supplementary?
Thank you. On the broader aspects of the City Deal, what assurance can we give that Milton Road will not see massive engineering works which will spoil the environment of that particular road?
Well, I find that question slightly bizarre because it's nothing directly relating to the first question, and it's also not the business of the council. But I will give Councillor Tunnicliffe an answer. I will ask Councillor Tunnicliffe how his view locally squares with Councillor Bick, because Councillor Bick, as chair of the Assembly, approved the budget for Milton Road, approved the consultation on Milton Road, and now apparently Councillor Bick's close colleagues and West Chesterton Ward seem to think there should be no consultation at all, and they're saying that there should be no improvements to Milton Road. I'm baffled because I can't see the consistency of the party.
Councillor Cantron.
Question number 4 to the leader.
Perhaps following along the same theme as the answer to the last question, clearly there is a need for citywide measures, and there is both, I understand, an access study, and also there is the need to reflect on the call for evidence that occurred before Christmas. But to suggest, as I think you may be suggesting in this question, that it's an either-or, we think is wrong. There is a need to both improve the routes in and out of the city, both in terms of bus users, in terms of cyclists, in terms of access by striking also a balance with the local residents and taking a keen interest also in environmental impact. But the suggestion in this question is that you should either do one or the other. We think there's a need for citywide measures. As Labour councillors on this side, we also see that there's a need to improve the routes in and out of different corners of the city.
Supplementary?
Yes, Mr Mayor. As the leader's aware, he is our representative on the City Deal, so I think it's wholly appropriate that he be scrutinised in this chamber in relation to issues that relate to city residents, regardless of whether we, as members, may address the City Deal Board. Supplementary I have, Mr Mayor, is coupled to the demand management measures. I would ask the leader to look into also residents' parking controls across the city. Residents in Newnham, in my ward, increasingly concerned in terms of what has become as a result of the County Council imposing charges in relation to the park and ride. Large areas across the city, not just Newnham, are now becoming park and rides. So will he undertake to explore on a comprehensive basis flexible resident parking controls as part of any demand management solution that the City Deal comes up with?
Again, Mr Mayor, the supplementary of Brockmore bears no direct relationship to the original question. I did take the opportunity of having a meeting with the county officers about parking only this week. We have had in the past consultations on residents' parking, and generally, as in the case, for instance, West Chesterton Ward, or in the case of other parts of the city, they've either resulted in spillover impacts or divisions within communities as to whether they're a good idea. It is it's no secret that my personal view and the view of the Labour councillors on the City Council is that it was a crazy move by the County Council to start charging, and that has resulted in up to 15% diversion of cars from park and rides, a position which they actually admit that it will now not be possible to reverse, even if they drop the charge, because of the change in behaviour that has resulted from that. We recognise as part of the City deal that we will need to bring forward proposals in the summer on parking, and that will be in consultation with the work that's already underway and being initiated by the Joint Committee. But I think what we do need to do is look around the city about which areas are most affected, and we may also look at other options as well as that will deter people from parking on residential streets, because it isn't fair in large parts of the city that commuter parking dominates streets.
Councillor Perry.
Question 5.
Well, obviously, in terms of environmental report, it's now been just over a year. I think so far we've had some very good successes. It's nice to see the councillors generally, regardless of party, have put in a range of issues within their areas and priorities. And obviously, as we now go forward for the next calendar year, I'm keen to listen to what things people would like added in where possible, if feasible, and with the complement that we already do. What I would say is that apart from the obvious, the flincers and the priority setting and controls and so on, the focus for the next year or so, based on what councillors of different shades have either approached me with or things that I myself think we should be doing more of, we'll be looking at particular upsurge in educational activities and events undertaken by our waste team, schools and places. Community payback activities will already increase. It's something which I'm quite keen that every ward can suggest a project via Wendy Young or Area Committee for some level of community payback in my own ward that needs to be put out in the past, but also which straddles between my ward and our ward and market. There are other activities you might have that with the potential to improve your areas. Other things talk about volunteer opportunities. Obviously, we've received a record amount of money from FPNs. We've used that money to buy a whole range of equipment for volunteers. We've also used it to buy other elements of different kit, different things which are needed to help keep the general areas around Cambridge litter-free. But we're really keen to get more volunteer events going on top of the ones that are already planned. Clean for it. I mean, I'm a Republican, but we signed up as a council to clean for the Queen, because at the end of the day, it's the gist of what they're trying to do is a good scheme. What I am very keen on is to carry on some of the campaigns and bits that we've got around certain things. For example, we've got the abandoned vehicles. Yes, I'll wrap up. I'll come back with more.
Disappointed.
Sorry, are there plans to expand what environment reports show about waste issues?
Yes. Just so happens. What an supplementary question. Now, I'm also very keen, in all seriousness, we've introduced ward walkabouts. I know that, for example, in Market Ward, they've been very good at taking them up. In my own ward, they've been very good. I know there's one in East Cheston that's, I think it might have happened by now. And the idea behind this is feedback, and not just in terms of city priorities and city things we do, but also things like cleaning road sites and things that will all get reported back. We are looking at the minute into a whole range of other things to help with community groups. Some community groups have been in contact about graffiti packs. It's something which we have the money to do to help residents look after their areas, for example, residents associations and so on. I'm particularly keen to carry on with listed bikes and things, and also maybe introduce an amnesty. At the minute, our abandoned bikes are given to a charity, which I think everyone agrees is a good thing, but an amnesty for anyone who's got an old bike that everyone got one will something that I'm looking at considering next year. In terms of waste, very quickly, I know that councillors want the waste figures by ward. Obviously, that's not possible because of the way the bin routes are and so on. But what I will try and do is look at that and see what more we can provide. Based on a number of things obviously being said tonight, I noticed a lot of people are conflating the difference between a litter bin, obviously residential bin, and in all seriousness, or a recycling point. Now, I think it's fair to say that under both parties there has been an issue for a number of years about recycling points in the city. Fly tipping there is a real issue, and has been for a number of years. those very recycling points is I will try to see if we can bring something around every area committee to look at your recycling points and look at ways that we can maybe improve those to cut down on the fly tipping. And just to finish on this one though, in a very serious manner right now, obviously the shared waste board side of things, I hope that we may be able to get some sort of agreement on having side waste taken from blue bins. Now, if side waste is taken from blue bins, so the overgrowth of your blue bin which currently isn't taken, then I think that gives us a golden opportunity to look at everything that we do in terms of recycling points and recycling in the rounds for a more holistic approach, which hopefully will improve our recycling.
Councillor Todd Jones. Since later. Question 7 as well, which is yes, Councillor B.
Building on the city deal, the council has a long record of working towards greater devolution. We passed a couple of motions, and the purpose for sharing the document, the blue document, is really just to record the fact that this council has got views that it's shared. And we also, through 2015, including a proposal that was put to Greg Clark in July, have been clear that we believe in a Cambridgeshire-based devolution, which particularly respects the needs of Greater Cambridge. So the fundamental recent events are that we had a workshop of 70 from all of the different organisations and councils in the county in January, and when it was put to that meeting, do you want to go for a 3-county devolution, the answer was no. But what's come back since then is that the government has said there is only one option on the table. It's the 3-county devolution plus a mayor, and we are responding in that context. There's been a rush of meetings, and there is a deadline next Friday. In terms of the structure, I propose to see where we're at during next week, and then have discussions, including inviting the leaders of the 2 groups, because I'm conscious that there's a democratic deficit, not of my making, simply in the timescales. In terms of what I call the red lines, and I use part of what is driving it is actually the wish that there be devolution announcements in the budget. And quite apart from everything else in this, the dictating of a 2.5-week window to get 7 Cambridgeshire councils together with 16 other councils and come up with a half-sensible proposal that's been adopted and agreed with all sorts of grey areas to enable that to happen is not good governance and not good government, and it certainly isn't localism and devolution. So in terms of red lines, and I don't mean to use that as a political colour, but the red lines are that Cambridge and our Cambridgeshire councils really have a genuine say over issues affecting their county, number 1. Number 2, and it's been clearly expressed by a number of business networks in communicating their views, including a letter that was sent to the LEP signed by Cambridge Network, Cambridge Ahead, some leading businesses, the IOD, the CBI, not the FBI, but almost every organisation, the Federation of Small Businesses, all say that this could potentially put the Greater Cambridge economy at risk, because whilst we recognise the need to work as a region, we are a particular economy with a very special needs, and we have links to Essex, we have links to Hertfordshire, we have links to London, we have links to the world that aren't necessarily going to be thought about. Red line 3, and there does need to be a regional transport board, we recognise that, but is this the right proposal? And again, should it be right across the region? Red line 4 is will the government listen to my red friend, or my red-tied friend in front of me? And we put a proposal for 1,350 new social homes to be built. And we know that the government policy isn't sympathetic, but this is a test for us. Will they actually listen to us, and will they actually recognise it isn't just about home ownership. We are sliding into a private rented economy in Greater Cambridge. We need to have homes of social rent. And finally, red line 5 is the city deal genuinely a base to be built on, rather than going to be undermined by this? at those red lines, it's going to be a tough call within a week to get answers from government that satisfy this council.
Supplementary for Councillor Todd Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just say that I agree it's a totally ridiculous timetable. Just commenting my sort of housing scrutiny committee hat on regarding red line 4, and that is that the devolution proposals have brought once again to the fore the debate on the housing need in and around Cambridge. And the recent government housing policy that's been discussed many times in this chamber has had a disastrous impact on the provision of social housing for those in desperate need of affordable housing. So, as has been mentioned by many of my colleagues in the past, the 1% cut year on year for 4 years has massively undermined the housing revenue account business plan. Our new build programme is on hold, forcing the council to sell high-value social housing to fund the so-called right to buy too, imposed on housing associations will further reduce the stock, and so on and so forth. And of course, the city deal asking us to provide 1,000 extra rental homes under the Greater Cambridge City deal. So this government policy, and then in total reverse to that, we have this situation where the government is imposing all these incredibly difficult and dangerous measures upon us. So given the government track record, do we really think that devolution negotiations have actually provided leverage with government over new housing freedoms, such as the high-level borrowing against the housing revenue account, or flexibility on rent levels, or on right to buy receipts, and the rest of the measures that we desperately need to free up housing for the council and the sub-region. And on the wider point, the leader mentioned the letter from the Cambridge and Peterborough business community, expressed to the Greater Cambridge and Greater Peterborough Local Enterprise Partnership, that the three-county proposal is fundamentally flawed. So I can ask the leader, where do you think the protection of the wider interests of the Cambridge sub-region realistically lie?
Well, we will listen to the government on both these points, but we've got a report which I urge all members to read, going to Housing Committee on the 8th of March, and that shows that just the HRA borrowing alone won't actually be enough to finance the 1,350 homes that we've been discussing with South Cambridgeshire as a joint project. So a number of these measures that have been implemented, it's not because we specifically are fighting tooth and nail for council homes, we're fighting for social housing and for housing associations who similarly been constricted by all these changes. Maybe it's an ask too far, but we know that there's a need in the city for people to have places to rent. And we believe it's right to challenge the government, not least because they wrote into the original city deal a 1,000 home target. And in terms of the broader issue, I'll be meeting the business organisations tomorrow morning. I want to hear from them what their view is, and I want the government ministers, including those that have been lobbying from outside Cambridgeshire, without ever writing to us, but have been lobbying direct businesses within the Cambridgeshire community, to hear what they've got to say. But they are highly sceptical that the huge global links and prosperity will be best served by this devolution model. That's their view, and government, I think, has to answer that question.
Councillor Bean.
I very much support the emphasis being laid on housing and what Councillor Earl said, but this three-county structure with an elected mayor starts to look like a very significant extra level in government. This seems an occasion for some leverage for the City Council, and I'm wondering if the leader would consider insisting on at least a referendum for a unitary council for Greater Cambridge, so that if we get an extra level above, we can at least simplify and improve accountability and joined upness below.
Well, we've got to take our view, and obviously I'll consult Councillor Bick when we see more detail. And we've got to take a view about whether we're in this or whether we actually stand apart and continue to challenge. There's still listening to do. I still want to hear what Treasury, what ministers have got to say about the detail, because part of it is their plan as much as anyone else's. In terms of its impacts, the impacts could be wide-ranging in that if you say that social services and transport are going to be
decided regionally, then you might end up changing the whole nature of county councils, which would then perhaps make it easier. People may have noticed a report in the Oxfordshire Mail, which I think the Prime Minister greeted with huge enthusiasm, partly because of the argument that he might have been having with Oxfordshire County Council. But on the serious point, Oxfordshire itself is looking at how this might be altered in terms of the geography. So if it does go ahead, then there will be issues about what is done regionally. It could well change the county council. This council in the past has expressed support for a clearer unitary approach, and there would definitely need to be a more powerful voice, not just for Cambridge but for Greater Cambridgeshire. And for us that includes not just obviously the core of us in South Cambridgeshire, but it includes ensuring that the economic geography is also recognised, whilst that may not be the direct shape of the council. So there may be changes as a result of this that are far-reaching, but the problem is 2.5 weeks is not a good way to assess it. And as yet, the government has not shown what is the comparison of going down this 3 counties route with other options. And we were well advanced as a county with a proposal.
We haven't got time for any more questions now, so the ones that haven't been answered, can we get written answers to their questions? Thank you. We now turn to the motion entitled Tourism Levy, agenda item 8A, to be considered by the Council, which can be found in the agenda, and a briefing note on Hannah Street Space has been emailed to you in the information packs on page 47. Can I call on Councillor Gillespie to move the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The two motions I propose are relevant to the budget because they deal with income which the council is able to earn, or with income which is lost to the public by not being claimed. The tourism that Cambridge enjoys is a good thing. It's a special city, it's a beautiful city, and it's great that we share it with so many people. I have an ambition, which is that people who come to Cambridge will see the work that we're doing to improve fairness and sustainability. They'll see us at some point seriously trying to become a zero-carbon city, which we pledge to do by 2050, so we'll make a proper start on it soon, I'm sure. And when they see this, they'll go back to wherever they visited from and talk about it, and it will help to inspire other places to follow our example. That's an ambition. The other element here in the context of this is austerity. The government are basically waging war on the sick and the poor with their austerity measures. It's clearly not a policy which is based in financial good sense. Countless economists have commented on this. But funding is falling to local councils. And everything that can make a profit, seemingly, is being privatised. council tax for services which are getting weaker. And it's common in other cities around the world that this is used as a measure to raise revenue. It could easily raise £1 million or more, and this money could be put into the Sharing Prosperity Fund. It could be put into the Climate Change Fund to make it an actual credible basis for the scale of the problem that climate change is. It could be used to regenerate the local market, which has been neglected. Instead of charging the traders additional money when they've been left languishing in a site with quite a poor state of repair, with markets that covers that leak in, cobblestones that people trip and injure themselves on, could be used to seriously improve that. It could be used to pay subsidies so that the ice rink on Parker's Piece can continue to be an ice rink instead of a theme park. It could be used to help pay for frontline services. We want to continue being a no-cuts council. Absolutely, this is extremely important. So we should be considering other revenue streams. And this, as I say, is one which is done in other places. It's not uncommon. So I hope that someone will choose to second this so that we'll have a debate about it. I haven't anyone in mind, but perhaps I'll have a speaker.
I was going to ask that. Have we got a second now?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak? Get some more?
I would like to speak.
Okay.
Thank you. I think this is a very ill thought through proposal. If we look at the south area of the city, the predominant group of people who come to stay are relatives visiting Addenbrooke's, or relatives of people in Addenbrooke's, and they're having to stay because Addenbrooke's is a regional hospital centre. We have a huge number of visiting academics, visiting businessmen, for the myriad of small genetic startups, companies, and skilled workers building and maintaining our infrastructure. Tourism is not very high on the list, so we'll be penalising an awful lot of other people quite unfairly. Should this approach be taken? Thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, my colleague opposite, who's picked up on some of the points I was going to make. Mr. Mayor, members will have seen from the briefing notes you've been circulated by now, the Council actually has no powers to impose a tax on tourism. Therefore, the thrust of this motion, which asks that officers prepare a full report on the issues, take strategy and resources, I'm afraid it's not terribly good use of officers' time. Councillor Gillespie knows since preamble we have a funding crisis in local government, therefore I'm sure he appreciates my reluctance to ask officers to spend time on an issue we have no powers over. And I also ask Council and fellow members to know my reluctance to spend an awful lot of time on an issue we have no powers over at this time of night. Mr. Mayor might also note, as we did earlier in response to a public question, that the Council recently voted through Community Services Committee to establish a destination management organisation. The express purpose of this organisation is to promote a model of tourism that's more sustainable, higher value, based on longer stays across the whole of the region, rather than the focus of tourism being day trips in the city. The business model is a combination of a voluntary membership fee paid by businesses and the income from official grouping tours. The imposition of a tourist tax on the line for Councillor Gillespie's sites would completely undermine that model, a model as councillors endorsed and which launched last month. Might I also note that by punishing hoteliers, it would do nothing, absolutely nothing, to deter day trippers, and also therefore undermine the enhanced model of tourism that we're trying as a council and as a city to work towards. As well as punishing hoteliers and the longer stay-based businesses we're able to encourage, we have, as my colleague has just noted, no way of distinguishing why a visitor might be staying in Cambridge overnight. A tax on this model would punish parents coming to visit children in the universities, guests at academic conferences, day patients at Addenbrooke's, while making no difference whatsoever to the number of tourists in the city centre. Mr. Mayor, none of us want to discourage councils from making their mark on the council, and as far as possible on this side of the chamber, we've tried to be as helpful and constructive as we can, even when motions have been advanced, including by our own side, that have little relevance to our business. This motion is not, I'm afraid, one that I can respond to positively. That's why we set up the DMO. We launched it a minute ago. The motion undermines it. I appreciate Councillor Gillespie has the best possible motivations and is concerned about genuine problems we've all identified in dealing with the weighted numbers who want to visit our city. But the solution identified is completely counterproductive to our vision of tourism. It's badly timed, and given that we have no relevant powers in any case to impose a tourist tax, taking a report committee on the issue is completely pointless. Mr Mayor, with regret, I ask this council reject the motion.
Councillor Gillespie, would you like to write? Sorry, Councillor Beard, I didn't have you down on this.
Just a quick one, Mr. Mayor. I think that the question of the tourist tax is a bit more complicated than Councillor O'Reilly was trying to describe it in a really slap-down contribution. For me, the most important thing here is that we're talking about a power that this council doesn't have. But personally, I believe that if going back to this sequence of questions we just had, if we were talking about powers that in principle might be devolved to councils like ourselves, I would say probably this should be one of them. But I think the application of that, one would have to be very careful about and would have to understand how it fitted with what else we were trying to achieve. So unfortunately the motion is not about means of us getting that power. It is about implementing a power, and if we don't have it, I can't really support it for that very practical reason.
Councillor Gillespie, would you like to come back?
Sure, thanks, Mr Mayor. It's true that day trippers are a big issue for the city and cause a lot of traffic congestion, as well as loss of real access to public spaces by pedestrians. But we can do both. We should certainly be trying to tackle coaches coming into the city as well. So it's not valid to say that that's the problem we should be focusing on to the detriment of the other. There was a proposal recently from the business community to charge £500 or so for coaches coming in. And that would seem to be the appropriate kind of scale. The cost of the tourists staying in hotels should be very small, and this is what I'm suggesting. The point of the motion isn't to reduce the number of tourists, it's to find a level which allows them to keep coming and just brings in a steady stream of revenue as a result of it. I don't believe it would affect the number of tourists that come, but perhaps a study into that would be more helpful than forgetting about it. We don't have the power to do this at will right now, but the potential to get these powers might have been there at the start of the city deal if we'd been poised to negotiate for it, if we'd discussed it and if we supported the principle. It might be there again when we look at devolution. The tourist levy in Edinburgh was earned by calling for it this way. So if the council decides not to pursue the tourist levy, then I hope we will have some good ideas about where else to earn it. But I think it is important that we have debates about the potential to earn this revenue.
Councillor O'Reilly, you can have a say on this. Thank you. So now we'll now go to the vote. Please, all those in favour, please show. All those against? Now turn to the motion entitled Fair Tax to be considered by the Council. This can be found in your agenda. A briefing note by the Director of Business and Transformation has been emailed to you and is in your information packs on page 49. Also in your pack on page 55 is additional information to this motion sent from Councillor Gillespie. Can I call on Councillor Gillespie to move the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This motion is actually prepared by Christian Ayers, and you'll see the plan that they put together to describe the purposes of the information more. I'm right-wing media, by which I mean Britain's media, are keen to point the finger at benefits fraud. And watching some of the TV, reading some of the newspapers, you could be forgiven for thinking that benefit fraud was costing the country more than anything else. But actually, it comes to around £1 billion, while tax loss is estimated by HMRC at 4 billion, is estimated by Tax Research UK at more like 20 billion. So the point of this motion is to try and reduce tax evasion by changing the culture. The people who've worked this motion up see it as something similar to the fair trade mark, the living wage campaign. The fair tax mark is something companies will be able to use to show they're complying with the standard of tax obedience, the proper process, and by referring to it or allowing companies to disclose their tax records in some other way, we'd be helping to change the culture and cut down on the fraud, thus bringing much more money into availability by the state.
We've got a second for this. Councillor Holland, would you like to speak? Councillor Ellis.
I'd like to speak to an amendment. I really don't intend to say very much on this. The amendment's in the pack. Essentially, I think we all share Councillor Gillespie's concern with tax evasion and all the issues that he throws up. But I don't think that it's a good idea to be doing this on the hoof in a full council meeting without considering finally the impact it may have on smaller suppliers and thresholds. It were me to move the principle of it to the kind of threshold it would be set at. So all the amendment calls for is rather than saying no, rather than definitely saying yes, let's take a report test and I'll have a concise report which outlines the detail and what the implications should be, then you can decide at a later date. Can we use a short amendment?
Have we got a seconder for this amendment? Councillor Pitt?
What he said.
Well then, any further debate? If not,
Remember that few words for a speech.
I will now go to the vote. Everybody said he didn't want to. No. Please, can I see all those in favour of the amendment? Unanimous. So, and motion. Amendment, yeah, of the amendment, yeah. Okay. Right. Members are requested to note the written question asked found in the information on page 67. The next meeting of the Council is a special meeting which is going to be held on the 23rd of March.